It's April 9th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the phone call between acting President Han Duck-soo and U.S. President Donald Trump. The two sides discussed the security alliance and tariff-related issues during their conversation that came 4 days after former President Yoon Suk-yeol's dismissal over his martial law order. Trump also signaled hiking up South Korea's defense payments. Trump's long-warned reciprocal tariffs come into force in the coming hours as of 1 p.m. Wednesday, Korea time. According to the White House, Trump is prioritizing negotiations with two of America's closest allies, South Korea and Japan. And the South Korean government continues to back local industries that are under mounting pressure over Trump's tariffs, now injecting extra liquidity of around $1.4 billion into local auto and parts industries. As South Korea's political uncertainty subsides after former President Yoon's dismissal last Friday, and with acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo in full command of the nation's foreign affairs, the first leader-level talks with the U.S. took place on Tuesday. We have our Oh Soo-young, who is at the Prime Minister's office at the Sejong government complex. Good morning, Soo-young.
Good morning to you, Tammy.
So, Soo-young, the two leaders held quite a lengthy phone call, didn't they? Let's go over the highlights.
Sure, Tammy, it was quite lengthy indeed. It was around 28 minutes, according to the acting president's office. And the phone conversation marked the first top-level talks between Seoul and Washington since President Trump came into power, as you mentioned. And the call also came around 16 hours ahead of Trump's 25% reciprocal tariffs targeting South Korea. That could, of course, significantly impact its export-driven industries. That's actually on top of the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminium levied last month. Han's office said the two leaders agreed to continue ministerial-level dialogue and economic cooperation on issues such as the allies' trade balance. As such, Han underscored South Korea's willingness to deepen cooperation in three key sectors: shipbuilding, liquefied natural gas, and addressing the bilateral trade imbalance. On the security front, Han called for stronger unity on North Korea, stressing that the allies' resolve, as well as the international community's, on North Korea's denuclearization must outweigh Pyongyang's ambitions. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitments to the South Korea-U.S. military alliance and agreed to closely coordinate on North Korea policy, while also advancing their trilateral cooperation with Japan.
Of course, the phone call was full of formalities, but reading between the lines, what message, Soo-young, do you think the leaders were trying to get across amid trade tensions?
Well, I mean, it seems that both leaders could be angling for a trade deal. In an interview with CNN just hours before the phone call, acting President Han Duck-soo called for a win-win deal with President Trump, saying that Seoul has no intention of retaliating against U.S. tariffs, unlike countries like China and Japan. He proposed what he called a, quote, cool negotiation, expressing confidence that friends and allies could reach a mutually beneficial deal that could prompt Washington to recalibrate its trade policies. Meanwhile, President Trump took to his social media Truth Social after the call, describing what he called a great phone call with Han. He said they discussed South Korea's, quote, tremendous and unsustainable trade surplus, as well as tariffs, LNG deals, a joint Alaska pipeline venture, and the cost of stationing U.S. troops onto the Korean peninsula. Trump claimed that South Korea began paying billions in contributions towards military costs during his first term, but that deal was terminated by, quote, sleepy Joe Biden. However, his claim doesn't really align with facts. A new defense cost-sharing agreement was reached last October under the Biden administration, under which South Korea will increase its contribution by 8.3% starting next year, with annual increases based on inflationary growth. And that really marks a significant financial commitment by Seoul. Despite some sticking points, the U.S. president said there is room and potential for a great deal that could benefit both countries. He expressed his preference for a one-stop shopping deal, which refers to bundling trade, defense, and industrial cooperation into one single sweeping deal. Now, Trump further noted that Seoul and Washington's trade officials are to engage in talks, noting that South Korea's quote, top team was already coming to Washington. And that, of course, refers to Seoul's Trade Minister Chung In-gyo to meet with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer during his two-day trip to D.C. Now, after the call, several high-ranking officials, including National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett, said that Trump gave orders to prioritize reciprocal tariff negotiations with allies such as Korea and Japan.
All right, Soo-young, let's see what happens over in D.C. Thank you for your coverage as always. And South Korea will funnel an additional 2 trillion won, or $1.3 billion into the auto and parts industry amid pressure from the 25% tariff imposed by the Trump administration. The announcement came during an economy-related ministers' meeting on Wednesday, which addressed responses to shifting trade conditions, including U.S. tariffs and global supply chain changes. Last year, U.S.-bound vehicle exports totaled $34.7 billion. That's accounting for nearly half of Korea's total auto exports. The government is also speeding up efforts to diversify export markets. It plans to inject over $40 million worth of support for overseas operations of small and mid-sized firms, while expanding R&D funding to boost technological competitiveness. And reciprocal tariffs by the Trump administration come into force in the coming hours for South Korea, while leaving all options on the table for each country. The U.S. has also confirmed its total of a whopping 104% tariffs on China. Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Washington announced it would impose an astounding 104% tariff across all Chinese imports starting Wednesday. The White House press secretary said a day earlier that Beijing's decision to retaliate was a mistake.
Countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership.
China was already set to see tariffs increase by 34% on Wednesday, following 2 rounds of 10% levies. The rate shot up again as Beijing did not back down on its decision to impose 34% retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods by noon on Tuesday. Levitt also said if China were to reach out to Trump over tariffs, Trump will be incredibly gracious, but will do what is best for American interests. The White House further noted that nearly 70 countries have already reached out to Trump to begin negotiations for tailor-made trade deals.
All options are on the table for each country, but again, these are going to be tailor-made deals.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, during a hearing with the Senate Finance Committee on Tuesday, hinted at possible negotiations if a country offers a better alternative than the tariff plan, but said Washington would not offer exemptions or exceptions in the near term. Meanwhile, with the imposition of a 25% reciprocal tariffs on South Korean imports to take effect starting Wednesday, Seoul's trade minister arrived in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday for talks with Washington's top trade negotiator. He said Korea would have 2 major projects it could bring to the table.
The Alaska LNG project is an important part, and shipbuilding, where discussions are already ongoing between the 2 countries, is an area the U.S. is particularly interested in, so it will likely be brought to the negotiating table for discussions.
While saying his goal is to completely eliminate mutual tariffs, Chung said Korea will aim to reduce the tariffs gradually if elimination is difficult. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The Han-Trump phone call could not have come at a better time, with South Korea looking to get back on its feet after the impeachment ruling, and also ahead of Trump's reciprocal tariffs set to come into effect in the coming hours. Let us turn to Professor Min Jung-un for more. It's good to have you with us, Professor Min.
Good morning.
So should we be relieved for now that the 2 sides at least reaffirmed the 2-country security alliance?
Yes, I think that it's a good news to hear that the 2 leaders between South Korea and U.S. had phone calls last night because there was a growing concern in South Korea that South Korean government was failing to talk with the U.S. counterpart at the top level. And during the 28 minutes talks last night, the two leaders talked several issues, including trade balance, tariffs, energy and shipbuilding cooperation, and defense payment, as well as they reaffirmed the strong ROK-US alliance between the two countries. So I expect that the ROK-US alliance continues to be durable under the Trump government, although Trump government is going to be a little bit more aggressive to secure its own national interests against South Korea. And the two countries are expected to actively talk to cope with the various bilateral issues like trade balance, the tariffs, economic cooperation, and border sharing in the coming months.
Well, that is a relief for now that the two sides have reaffirmed their security alliance. But Trump also raised questions over South Korea's defense payments, which we all knew was coming. Will South Korea have to follow Trump's call this time to protect national interests and also, considering other issues like tariffs you just mentioned?
Yes, I think that South Korea needed to talk with the United States in terms of coping with the various issues, like you mentioned, the trade and the burden sharing and other issues. So like the one-stop shopping, as the Trump mentioned last night. As you know, South Korea is relatively the weak partner in its relations with the United States, and South Korea needed to maintain a good relationship with the U.S. in various ways. Although South Korea may feel uncomfortable about U.S. aggressive moves against South Korea, but U.S. is still a very important partner, more specifically the most important partner for South Korea in terms of security, economy, technology, and other issues. So I think that South Korea will try to resolve the trade and burden sharing issues as amicable as possible, and it will also try to maintain and improve its cooperation with the U.S. So South Korea will pursue a win-win way forward, that it will offer various cooperation with the U.S., like shipbuilding and semiconductor and energy cooperation, as well as it will try to reduce its trade surplus against U.S. by purchasing more American energy and products.
So there are still ways to satisfy both sides, Seoul and Washington. That's what you're saying. Professor Min, we are going through a turbulent time here in the country. How likely is it that North Korea may take advantage of this challenging time for South Korea and take provocative actions, or will the North be considerate for once?
Well, basically, I don't think that North Korea can take advantage of the ongoing political, the chaotic situation in South Korea and make provocations. As you know, North Korea is trying to disconnect its relations with South Korea, and it will try to establish itself as an independent country. So North Korea doesn't want to be involved in unnecessary controversy with the South. And North Korea is also carefully watching whether the U.S. and Russia will improve their relations through the negotiations to end the Russia-Ukraine war. So if U.S. and Russia are agreed to end the war and their relations are improved, there is a possibility that some diplomacy between North Korea and U.S. will resume with Russia's help. So I don't think that North Korea want to make provocations when South Korea is going through the political turmoil, which could make a negative impact on resuming talks with the United States. So therefore, unless there is a joint ROK-US military exercise or an unexpected incident, it is expected that North Korea will remain cautious and silent until the political turmoil in South Korea is gone. In addition, North Korea will continue to cooperate with Russia and receives economic and military support to survive, and it will prepare for the next move after the Ukraine war, find the exit.
Professor Min, thank you so much for connecting with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And what could be possibly the largest North Korea-manufactured warship, a new naval guided missile frigate, has been spotted at the Nampo Navy shipyard. According to the U.S. think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies affiliated website Beyond Peril, the warship is undergoing a fitting out process in which equipment is installed and supplies are loaded before it is handed over to the Navy. The frigate is approximately 140 meters long, making it the largest warship made in the North, and it's assumed to be the vessel leader Kim Jong-un visited in early March this year. South Korea added nearly 200,000 jobs in March compared to the previous year, marking the third consecutive month of job growth. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the health and social welfare sector's gains, followed by the public administration, defense and social security sector, as well as the finance sector. However, construction jobs fell by 185,000 year-on-year, while manufacturing jobs declined by 112,000. By age group, individuals aged 60 and older experienced a year-on-year surge in employment, whereas those aged 15 to 29 saw a decline. South Korea's inclusion in the World Government Bond Index, which was originally scheduled for November this year, has been delayed to April next year. And that means the benefits of being included in the WGBI, including reduction in government bond procurement costs, will also be delayed. While some pundits say the delay reflects investors' concerns about the political instability in the country, the government said it's due to Japan's request for an improvement in the investment environment and nothing to do with the political situation. The South Korean government projects at least $56 billion will flow into the country's national bond market once it's included in the WGBI. The U.S. and Iran will begin nuclear negotiations over in Oman this weekend, while Russia ratified a treaty that upgrades its relations with Iran and has expressed a willingness to help Washington and Tehran in negotiations. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The United States and Iran will sit down for nuclear talks in Oman on Saturday. Tuesday's announcement comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Iran could be in great danger if the nuclear negotiations do not go well.
He has said there will be direct talks with Iran on Saturday. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences to pay.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said a nuclear deal is possible as long as the U.S. is willing, while he dismissed the Libyan model, which would mean the full dismantling of Iran's nuclear program mentioned by Israel. Russia welcomed the news of the upcoming talks and expressed its willingness to provide assistance. According to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday, Moscow supports resolving the Iranian nuclear issue through political and diplomatic means. The remarks by the Kremlin also comes as Russia's lower house, the State Duma, on Tuesday ratified a 20-year strategic partnership treaty with Iran, elevating their bilateral relations. The treaty, which was signed by the leaders of Russia and Iran in January, strengthens political, military, and economic cooperation between the two countries. One of the key provisions commits Moscow and Tehran to counter shared security threats, exchange intelligence, and refrain from helping an aggressor if either country is attacked. However, unlike the treaty Russia signed with North Korea in October 2024, Iran did not include a clause allowing the deployment of troops to support military operations. Meanwhile, Russia also announced a separate expert-level talks with China and Iran on nuclear issues that took place in Moscow on Tuesday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has described Gaza as a killing field following urgent appeals from UN agencies for immediate action to ensure the delivery of food and aid to Palestinians in Gaza. On Tuesday, the UN chief addressed the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, calling the area a killing field where civilians face extreme suffering. He emphasized the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire, the release of hostages, and humanitarian access to the enclave. Guterres also rejected an Israeli proposal to control aid deliveries into Gaza, saying it could potentially restrict humanitarian support down to the last calorie and grain of flour. The head of 6 UN agencies issued a joint appeal to world leaders, calling for urgent action to facilitate the delivery of food and aid to Gaza's residents who have been without supplies since March 2nd. In the Dominican Republic's capital city, Santo Domingo, at least 66 people died and over 150 were injured after the roof of a nightclub collapsed during a live performance. In the early hours of Tuesday local time, the roof of the Jet Set nightclub collapsed during a concert by merengue singer Ruby Perez with hundreds of people inside when the incident occurred. Among the deceased are Nelsie Cruz, the governor of Monte Cristi province, and the sister of former Major League Baseball player Nelson Cruz, as well as former MLB pitcher Octavio Dotel. Ruby Perez sustained injuries but is reported to be in stable condition. While investigations are underway to determine the cause of the collapse, the country's president expressed his condolences and assured all resources are being deployed for ongoing rescue efforts. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Tuesday local time that Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting alongside the Russian army in the eastern part of the country. Zelensky stated that intelligence suggests more Chinese individuals are present in Russian military units. He directed Ukraine's foreign minister to engage with Beijing to seek clarification on this matter, but has not heard from the Chinese government yet. The development raises questions about China's role in the conflict, given its previously declared stance for peace.
Spring is really in the air now, even the morning chill is easing up. Meanwhile, a dry weather advisory has been expanded to more parts of Korea. But today's nationwide rain will help ease those dry conditions. Rain will begin later this afternoon in the western parts of Korea, gradually spreading to the rest of the country by tonight, continuing some parts through tomorrow afternoon. And further south, we'll see heavier rainfall with up to 40 millimeters in the forecast for Jeju. And heads up for those in the western regions, yellow dust from the Gobi Desert may mix in with the rain this afternoon. And checking on today's highs now, Seoul and Chuncheon both will be getting up to 18 degrees Celsius. Those in Gyeongsang-do provinces might not need an umbrella during the day unless you're planning to stay out late. Then weekend rain is in the forecast, which will bring down the highs to just 9 degrees in the capital on Sunday afternoon. But for today, be sure to keep an umbrella and the face mask if you're in the west.
That is all we have for this morning. Thank you so much for watching.